All right, what's up, everyone? Let's get started. Great to have you all here. Happy Tuesday. Yeah, great crew. We'll probably get some more coming in here, but I love people are getting here a little bit earlier. Things are going good. Summer's winding down, so people have less to do at this time. It's dark. I remember when we were doing this show and it was light out back here, and it was dark at like 6 p.m. tonight. So things are changing. Great to have you all here. Before we get started, quick announcement. So for those of you that don't know, we're hiring at Refine Labs. We're looking for several director of demand gen candidates. To give you a little bit more background on what we're doing here at Refine Labs, we believe that we're working to completely transform the way that companies think about and execute marketing, specifically B2B software companies. At the moment, we work with 40 enterprise SaaS organizations to transform their demand generation programs, first starting with measurement, then looking at execution, and then also looking at scaling programs out. And so a lot of the companies that we work with, you probably know yourself. If you are interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn DM or check out the job postings on LinkedIn or refinelabs.com. Now let's get into it. Now that I had that announcement, I got to figure out where I'm going to start. So we'll start with the first one here. A new way to think about LinkedIn ads. I'm not sure if this happened on the last Demand Gen Live. I think it happened on a different live event. And so if it did happen on the last Demand Gen Live, excuse me, we're going to go a little bit deeper here. Is that, and let me give some background. Because every company that I interact with, the only move they ever think of when they think about LinkedIn ads is I need to use a lead gen form and I need to collect leads. And then occasionally, because I do go in there and see the mix, and so the average mix and budget allocation that I see is about 79% of the budget that goes to LinkedIn is spent on lead gen ads to collect leads that don't close. And then the other 21% is spent on awareness, which is basically the company just mailing it in, running an awareness campaign and chalking it up as awareness. But for the most part, it's performance-driven lead gen. And so I wanted to give people a different perspective of how to think about this, which I think is very cool. And so if you think about it back to, let's go to 2001. And back in 2001, you see all these B2C companies having a ton of success running television commercials, like Nike, what other big companies grew during that time? Walmart, those types of companies growing on the back of television commercials. And the reason that B2B companies didn't use television commercials or radio for the most part is because the targeting wasn't good. If the targeting was better, then B2B companies could have run television commercials and they would have had a completely different look at what they're doing, but the targeting wasn't there. And so then 10, 15, 20 years later, these cool products like Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and otherwise show up where you can basically target your exact customer. And you could, and what I'm suggesting that people think about is instead of thinking about it like, how do I create some piece of content so I can get someone's email address so I can push them through marketing automation, what if you thought about, I have the opportunity to run a different television commercial to my target buyer every single day. You'd have to change a lot of different things. You'd have to change how you measure, but one of the main important parts that B2C companies get, that B2B companies definitely do not get, is that you need to invest in the creative. And so companies couldn't do the television commercial once a day, which would be probably the best move in marketing right now, to think about that you're running a television commercial to your target customer and creating content or creative every day to go out to them. And B2B companies couldn't do that because they don't invest appropriately in the actual video. And so giving people a little bit of a different look, because if you had the flexibility to do this, one, you could be way more creative. Two, your marketing would be way more effective. And three, your buyers would like it more. And so having just finished up another Salesforce analysis, probably like we're going on, I don't know, probably close to 60 now that I've done. Another one, $750,000 and spent on LinkedIn ads last year. 62K ARR, closed one. Complete waste of money, but they see 1,100 leads, so they keep rolling. And so I've just trying to push people to think about a different strategy, because you're going to spend the money anyway. You might as well spend it in a way that's more productive and effective.
So what's your recommendation for creating like the content engine to produce the right type of content for like a cohesive paid LinkedIn strategy? Dive deeper into that.
So there's tons of different options that you can do once you adjust your mindset. So if you can adjust your mindset that I don't need leads, that I'm looking to get people to, I'm trying to create demand for our product where the buying committee understands what we're doing, shares this content internally, talks about it in Slack, gets budget approved, and then comes to our website ready to buy. And so if you look at it that way, you have tons of flexibility. Record a video with one of your top customers. You could even segment it. Let's say you're going after financial services. Go and get one of your top customers in FinServe, film a little talk with them, and then run it to all your target accounts in FinServe. Right? So you could do that. You could think about, and the other alternative, so I talked about television commercials, like if you're running in LinkedIn, you could also think about it like a billboard, and then you just have a picture. Right? And so when people what I was trying to get to is you're not watching television commercials and direct response converting. When you see a television commercial for a Ford F-150 or for Geico or for Peloton or for any of the other ones that you see, you're not running off there right afterwards, going to your phone and being like, okay, let me now buy the Peloton. A few people do that, but that's not how Peloton measures success, and that's not how a majority of people consume the ad. And so it's changing your mindset around it. Everyone in B2B is in the direct response game because of the measurement. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so if you think about it, it'll get back to the billboard track. If you're on a billboard, you could just make a picture. Pretend all your target customers are driving down the highway to their office. And then they're stopping on LinkedIn. They get to see your billboard. What are you going to write? You could do that every day. If you're thinking about a video strategy, you could use, we've talked through the content mix, but you could go with some part of the mix that looks sort of like what we put in LinkedIn, category marketing, thought leadership, whatever you want to call it, that educates people about what's going on in the market and why people should pay attention. You could do a combination of product marketing, customer testimonials, videos. The options are really endless, and you can really let creativity and how customers respond drive what you do next. And all you got to do, change how you measure LinkedIn ads, and you can do way cooler stuff. And so I'd be happy to answer a follow-up, but that's the video mix is endless once you kind of break that barrier down.
Yeah, and agree with you completely on measurement, but what are the signals that you're looking for, especially with either static creative or video through paid ads on LinkedIn? What are the indicators that a particular piece of creative or content is resonating or not resonating, especially if you're not doing direct response? What are the signals that people can look out for to continue to lean into the creative and the content that is resonating with their target market?
So I've actually sort of started to change my stance on this. The reason is because a lot of people will look at this and look at click-through rate as the way to say that this image or this design or this message worked better than another one. But if you really look at it and if you try and measure statistical significance, there's almost no statistical significance about whether or not one is better than the other. It's just pure variation. Secondarily, just because someone clicked doesn't mean that it was more effective. And so I think that we need to change our mindset on these types of things. B2C companies that are running a television commercial are not running the commercial and then looking at how many people use the coupon code to decide whether or not the television commercial worked. So there's got to be a different way. The way that I've done it in the past, which I think is really, people can take something away from this, is that if you validate the message with your actual customers before you run it, then you could just run it with confidence. But most companies don't talk to customers, so they just pick a message and they run it without confidence, and they look for data to show them that it worked or not. And they're guessing. And so having a good understanding of what how your customers talk, how they respond, different things like that would probably be the most effective answer. I've moved away from measuring taking click-through rate or other things like that. If you have a video, you can look at view through video, and that's probably a very strong metric. So videos and animations, percent watched in your target market, and make sure the targeting is good, is probably a big one. But generally, if you have good targeting, you say, these are the accounts that I want to go after. These are the buyers inside of these accounts that I want to see this. I have a validated message that I've gone out in the market and talked to people and know that it resonates, or I have content that I've posted organically that people already told me that it works. And then I'm going to take that content and I'm going to guarantee delivery to the rest of my target market. I'm going to pay whatever, depending on your TAM, $400, $800, $1,200 to have my entire TAM see this when most don't. Like, that's the way that I would look at it. And then all you're doing, and if you have a content engine that's running, just put something else out the next day. You're learning dynamically about what's going on, but I think people look at the data too much to tell them whether or not stuff's working, instead of understanding customers and then following intuition and then just running the process.
Yeah, I love that, talking to customers. Nelson is curious your take on ads that use humor and whether they can be effective.
Of course, if it's actually funny. I mean, that's the part that matters, right? I think a lot of companies try to be funny and it's not. But there's definitely an opportunity to pull with any types of emotions in B2B advertising.
I got to follow up on that, if I may.
Oh, you may, Nelson.
Come on down, yeah.
Thanks, yeah. So I guess maybe to dig a bit deeper, I was curious, is that something that people are sleeping on, humor? Like, sometimes it seems like B2B ads are just quite dry, just sort of run of the mill, but every now and then I get really pleasantly surprised. And I just wonder, we talk about creative mattering a lot. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about maybe how does humor play in? Are you seeing that work well to some extent? You think maybe that's a missing element of creative, or what type of creative are you seeing is working quite nicely?
Yeah, so let's do a couple of humor examples. So let's say that you sell business financial planning software, and so you're doing that, and basically you sell an alternative to building a financial model in Excel, which is what we do here at Refine Labs. So I know this one. So basically that's what you're selling an alternative to. And so if you wanted to be funny and you actually knew the pain points that people had, you could make a video where it's like, CFO Jimmy going through here, hits one button, all of a sudden the entire sheet like explodes, because that's what happens in in a financial Excel model. And so you just make the little example. It's a 10-second video. He's doing the math, looking at the Excel, hits a button, the entire sheet explodes. And that's like, it would be humorous to people that have gone through that pain, because it's terrible. You don't know how to, once it's broken, you really don't know how to fix it. And they're basically selling a solution to that. Same thing, you could look at construction software where the current alternative is to like use a pen and paper to put together plans. And you got like, Rick, some construction guy on site, like the stuff that's happening across the street of my house. They're building a building. He's out there with a piece of paper, and then all of a sudden, like the wind comes and the wind blows the paper away, and he's like, oh, and he chases it, and the answer is just having it on your phone. So there's plenty of ways that you can kind of like poke fun at the status quo using humor. I think that would be I think that'd be an effective way to do it.
All right. Katie had a question. I'm going to bring her on to ask. You're on live, Katie. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hey.
My question was related to you were talking about using your current clients, filming videos with them, kind of endorsing your product, and then like using that to segment or using those to target different segments of your audience and all the rest of it, which I think is a great idea. But I guess my question is like, how do you convince clients to do that? I know that like the company that I work for is very like, company policy. We're not going to, do that kind of thing. And I imagine a lot of big businesses are like that. But I guess, it's like their time and everything. Like, how do you convince a company that maybe doesn't have a policy specifically about it to do something like that?
You appropriately value what that person's doing for you, right? So if you exclude, right, like I've tried to have stuff with like TED Talks and stuff. It's a no-go on like case studies with TED Talks. The brand's too strong. Their legal team just doesn't allow it. If you exclude those companies, which there's not that many, and then you move into the next tier and you say, okay, this works at some enterprise company. We're going after enterprise. They have credibility. How much would it be worth to us to have this person speak in a video and endorse our product because they love it and how they use it? Most B2B companies go out and say, hey, could you do this for us? I'd come out and be like, this is probably worth $15,000. I'm going to pay this person $15,000 for their endorsement. People need to think about this differently. And so that's the way. The legal hurdle is a complete different side, right? If you take that out, then you have like people that could do it if they wanted to, and you made it worth their time. And so there's plenty of people that would do it for free. There's plenty of people that would do it for $500. That's the like, what's in it for the other person is something that B2B companies, especially when they think about like these types of activities, never think about. They only think about what's in it for me.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. That was, I guess, really the question I was at, because like you're basically treating it like it's a speaking engagement that you're asking them to do, which, yeah, to your point, like I think a lot of it is asking for the endorsement for free, or like different vendors have like asked me to speak at events for free and that kind of thing. And you're like, well, like, sure, like I personally get some like benefit from them, but like also like you're leveraging a company name, not my name. So like, cool. Yeah. Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Katie. I have a question from Nate Davis on customer research that he emailed about last week and this week. So I want to
do one quick thing on Katie's before we go. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thought just popped in my mind. Another way to do it that would be, I think, different than having like going out high production filming somebody saying, hey, I love this product. It kind of could feel a little stuffy. Is the idea that what if you gave like whatever, you incentivize them somehow to film like a screen share for 5 minutes about how they use the product, or how they use this specific feature or this use case, and then you have the rights to either distribute that, put that on your website, use it however. You can pull quotes from it. You can make it into a billboard with, you know what I mean, with the quotes of what someone said, and then run that on LinkedIn ads. So there's can feel a little bit different if you have like this user generated. Then what happens? Like this person makes a piece of content covering your most popular use case that's way more differentiated than anything. And then instead of an SDR sending an outbound email saying, hey, can you come have a meeting with us, to say, hey, somebody that you trust at this company filmed a 5-minute video about how they do this specific thing. Companies of your size typically struggle with this because of this reason. I thought you'd want to check this out for 5 minutes. And that's your outbound email with user generated content instead of like the spam that everyone else gets from SDRs right now.
That was a great thought.
Cool. Sorry to interrupt you. Let's get back into it.
Yeah, totally. Let me sneak in Nate's question, and then we can circle back to the other agenda item while I drum up some more questions from the crew. So Nate Davis, he is an enterprise account executive in the life sciences arena. And his question is about visiting customers. He says at his company, sales does not do this currently, but he feels like if he asked, he would be allowed to speak with customers directly. And he's asking, how do you do this? I know you say it's important to visit customers and speak with them directly, but what is the actual ask? What do you do when you're on site? How do you make it not about yourself and about learning more about them? How do you make it so both parties get value out of the process?
Totally. So I've actually not done too much thinking about this from a sales perspective, because sales professionals speak with customers almost every day. The thing is that reason that I think that a marketer is better equipped to do this is sales is going in there with a very narrow view of what they're trying to accomplish. And so typically their questions and other things the talk track gets biased toward the outcome that they want, which is to close a sale. And I've just found that it's quite difficult for a sales professional to separate from the outcome and really look at what the customer's telling you and not look to close a sale. But anyway, I'll talk through what I would do. The second, and let me just talk through why I think that marketing is well equipped to do it. So one, they should be able to, if disciplined, to separate from the outcome because they not variable compensated on that type of thing. The real help here is, from a marketing standpoint, is for segmentation, targeting, positioning, messaging, customer strategy. That's why I think that marketing should do it. Right now, marketing guesses with those insights. So they put together a buyer persona and then they guess. And that's why I think it's so valuable, because if marketing did that stuff and then they had messaging that resonated and then they were able to create sales enablement materials that people actually used, and they were able to create content that their buyers actually wanted, that their sales team wanted to share, you can see how it goes. But it breaks down because they have the first step of the process gets missed, which is we need to understand deeply what our customers are doing. And so from a sales perspective, the value that you could provide if you did this is to feed that back to your marketing team, or take your marketing team with you so that they can start working on those things, because that's the end outcome is to solve that beginning part of the process. And so the things that I'm looking for, and let's talk through it. Step one is that I'm going to segment my customers quantitatively using business data. So I'm going to look through, I'm going to take, let's say we have 500 customers, and then I'm going to try and slice and dice it based on usage, ARR, retention, other metrics like that, to see what is similar about all of our top customers, what's similar about all of our worst customers, what's similar about all the companies that churn after year one. And then I'm going to start to, and then that one, you're going to be looking mainly at firmographics and usage, and then maybe putting together some other hypothesis and ideas. And then once I've figured out different ways to segment them, then I'm going to go and talk to the people to understand deeper about my level of segmentation. So let's say that I see all of this type of customer is churning after year one, and my thought process around why that's happening is because they don't have X, Y, and Z, which would make them eligible to continue using the product, and they didn't find that out until after they bought it. And so then I'm going to go out and talk to those people and say, why didn't the product work out for you? And if you start hearing the same thing, we didn't have X, Y, and Z, which made it more difficult for us to do this, then you start to get a sense about, okay, this segment doesn't get a ton of value, long-term value from our product because of this reason, which causes them to churn. Maybe we should change our ICP. Maybe we should stop targeting this company. Maybe we should be more upfront about that now that we know that. You can do the same thing for your best customers. And this typically, when you go and do the best customers, it's not, they're in FinServ and have more than 1,000 employees. That's how most companies segment right now. That's not the segmentation that's going to be the big winner for you. And so figuring out what are the more qualitative, more difficult to find type of factors that make a customer a really great fit for you, that get significant value from your product, and then going through and trying to figure out the same thing. So step one for me is always segmentation. Step two is understanding why the product works or why it doesn't work for that type of segment. And then after that, I'm going to go back to HQ. I'm going to put together some more hypotheses, and then I'm going to probably go out and test, I'm going to refresh my messaging based on just the top target customer, right? So company has broad messaging that works across the entire market. We know that this part of the market sucks and doesn't get value from the product. We know that this part of the market is the right part of the market. We're going to narrow our focus to just this segment. And then I'm going to adjust the messaging, because now I know more deeply who I'm talking to, so I can be way more specific to them. I'm going to adjust the messaging, not on the website. I'm just going to come up with some concepts, and then I'm going to go out back to the customer and I'm going to test concepts with them. Hey, I've been working on this thing. What I was after we chatted last time, it made me think about this, and this. And so I put together some ideas. I wanted to know if you could tell me if this resonated with you or not. And I'm going to test messaging and see what they think. And typically people will give you good feedback. The key to people feeling good about spending their time with you on that is, one, they feel like they're helping you. A lot of people will do it just because they want to help. 2, they don't feel like they're being tricked or sold to. That one's tough for some people. 3, tangible value is they get value from your company or you more, not just right then. So whether that's through content, other types of things that you can do for the relationship, surprise and delight, and inviting them into conferences, they get value from other things, and then you can play the card to go get some of those insights. Those are some of the reasons why someone would do it. And it basically comes down to building relationships with your customers.
I'll go ahead and add one point to that. If you're a sales rep, you've likely sold customers that are current customers. And so I think there's also an opportunity to go back to customers that you acquired yourself once they've been, using your service for a period of time, and glean some insights with them. Like, you already have a relationship established with probably a subset of those customers. So that's probably like an untapped opportunity for you to consider as well. All right. I'm drumming up some more questions. You want to cover the pipeline optimization agenda item? We can get through the agenda.
Let's go through it. I don't think we've gotten through a full agenda in quite some time. We usually have 3 topics, only get through 2. So
let's do it. The
agenda topic here says pipeline optimization, best practices for high intent lead handoffs to sales. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because I consistently go in, like the Salesforce thing that I just completed, where we spent $750,000 last year on LinkedIn ads and closed 62K ARR, which is terrible CAC. So I see that a lot, which I've been talking about, the lead gen advertising problems with the data that's so clear it's not working, but nobody looks at it. There's another thing that I see basically across the board that's not working, that no one seems to try to be solving. So I'm going to just talk about it, and maybe a couple of people will implement it and get way better results. And so the typical symptom of this is that you have qualified accounts that are coming and asking for a demo. And then I ask the company, like, okay, so what percentage of the people that do that sit on the first meeting? And they're like, right at the moment we get about 35% of people do that. Can you imagine that? You're spending all this money on marketing, all of the money to do these things, and then you have qualified accounts coming in to saying, hey, I'd love to talk to your sales rep about buying this stuff. And you got qualified accounts coming in saying, hey, I'd love to talk to your sales rep about buying this stuff. And then you only have 35% of them converting into a meeting, and you're not focused on fixing it. And so it's just like super high inefficiency. And so here's where it goes. Then I hear a lot of people talk about this concept. I'm about to be mythbusters, I think, because a lot of people keep talking about speed to lead. And I got a new concept, which is that speed to lead is totally outdated and totally unnecessary in today's world. The reason is because the speed to lead concept came about in like 2013 when you had SEO, and then you had people filling out an ebook, downloading it, and then you needed an SDR to chase them around. And if they followed up within 5 minutes, it was way more likely that they remembered that they downloaded it. But it's 2020. It's almost 2022 now. Like, you can keep doing that if you want, but buyers don't buy that way. And so at this point, a buyer, when they want to buy, probably should be able to go to your website and book a meeting directly with their account executive who can close the sale and talk to them. And so I'm going to talk through the different ways, I'll talk through a couple of different steps that you can take to get here. I know that companies aren't going to be able to go from what they are right now, which is bunch of leads coming through around a bunch of different sources. SDRs cold call them and try and just book meetings. Then the buyer sits on the meeting with the SDR, and then they leave. And then it's been 2 weeks or more before the buyer has even talked to a rep. It's pretty much what's happening right now. And so we don't need to think about how to follow up within the next 5 minutes. We need to think about how to create a buyer-centric process built for 2021 or 2022, which is that as a B2B buyer, if I work in an account that's qualified to buy from you and I want to buy, I want to be able to book a meeting with my rep at that exact, whenever I want. And I want to be able to have that rep, and I want to go through an efficient buying process to buy. And so if your percent, and I'd encourage people to just measure this percentage because I'll give you what I think the benchmark should be. If you can measure your percentage, and it also depends because if you're using paid traffic to drive a bunch of garbage into that form, it's going to affect it as well. So, but let's say that you're not doing that and you're at the current, like what most people think about as good, which is somewhere between 35 and 50% of people that fill out that form that are qualified actually sit on a first meeting. And I told you that, let's say it's 40 just for sake of round numbers. If I told you that just by doing this, that you could actually get that first meeting sat number from 40 to 80%, which means that you do nothing else in marketing, you close twice as much revenue just by fixing this part of the buying process. People don't understand how impactful this can be. At the moment, when we do this, people fill out the form when they want to talk to us. We put a calendar link up. Our meeting show rate is well above 95%. They book a meeting with the person, so I'll talk through it. A qualified account's going to come into your website and they're going to fill out a demo form and say, hey, I want to talk to your sales rep about buying this stuff. Then they're going to be able to, once they convert, and you can test this on I'd prefer if you didn't test it on our website because we get a bunch of tests in and it's just annoying, so don't. But form, they fill out the form, a calendar pops up. They can book a time that's convenient for them with their rep on the calendar. And then you might need to do a small amount of manual work for the couple of people that are unqualified firmographically. So you can do a manual scrub. It takes 2 seconds to look and say, okay, this company, hasn't even raised a seed round yet. They only have 10 employees. They're never going to be able to buy from us. Let's just send them a templated email that says that they're not going to be able to purchase, and we're going to clear the calendar to save everyone's time. And then everyone else that's left that's qualified, which should be a pretty high amount if you're doing marketing well, can just show up and sit on the meeting with their rep and go about it. And so if you wanted to, the first step of this, you could just do it directly to an SDR. If you want to limit the organizational change, you want to kind of crawl before you walk here, is just have the meeting be booked with an SDR. So then your SDR doesn't need to follow the 5-minute rule to get someone that asks for a demo to book a meeting. So they sit on that meeting, the SDR has it. And then if you have a show rate at that meeting of 70, 80%, I think you should switch it to your account executive as soon as possible because you're going to win more of them. And so it's going to shorten your cycle as well. So there's probably like 1 to 2 weeks of wasted time there trying to get people on the calendars, which can slow down velocity, can slow down momentum. You probably lose a lot of deals during that process as well. And so speeding that up, there's like a big business opportunity here for companies that do it. And the reason that companies don't, I guess there's a couple. So there's 2 that I see. One is complex territorization, where like they could never using software show the calendar of the person that should get the deal. And so in that case, I challenge you to think, because that's basically like, okay, let's put our internal constraints at higher importance than what our customer needs. That's basically what it's doing. I challenge you to think about, like, if I was the CEO of that company, I would say, if that's the problem, we're either going to figure out how to overcome this technologically, or we're going to have a separate team that handles all the inbounds, and we're going to win as many as possible because we're going to be the most customer centric. And other companies are like, no, we need to divide up the inbounds based on the territory so that everyone gets an equal amount, and in the process, we'll just make it way harder for our customers to buy from us. The second reason why companies don't do it is because they want everything to be 100% automated. So the idea that I mentioned, somebody's going to have to go in and they might have to check the 3 meetings that got booked on their calendar for next week and decide whether or not they're firmographically qualified using publicly available data, which would take them all of 3 minutes. I know that it takes less than 3 minutes because I do it for the people that book meetings on my calendar. And they want something that's fully automated. So the idea of doing 1 second of manual work, even if it makes it way easier for your customer, they don't want to do. And so there's a couple companies. I mean, if you want to talk through companies, like a lot of companies, a lot of people shout out. They shout out Gong for their marketing. They shout out Refine. They shout out us, Refine Labs, for our marketing. Go look at what both those companies do. Both us and Gong both put a calendar link in their thing to book a meeting directly with their rep when the account's firmographically qualified. It's called being customer centric. We need to get there. And it's not just being customer centric. It's better for buyers and it's better for business. I am positive that your conversion rate to first meeting will go up, that your win rates will go up, that your sales team will be happier if executed appropriately. We got to get to the last reason why. I missed it. But the third reason why companies don't do this is because they're stuck in the high volume lead gen model. This would never work if you're running content downloads and content syndication and all that other dumb shit, because it's never going to work. If you focus purely on the high intent bucket, that is where your revenue is actually coming from, where qualified buyers say, hey, I want to talk to you about buying this stuff. And if you only focused on that, this would totally work. You're going to have less buyers. They're going to convert at a way higher rate. You're going to get more revenue. So the other reason that people push back and they look at the speed to lead and they say, oh, we could never send these directly to account executives. And it's like, yeah, I know, because I just looked at your data and only 1% of these leads that you get, low intent leads, convert to an opportunity. So it wouldn't make sense to send that directly to your rep. But over here, we have leads that are converting to qualified ops at 50%. It's a little bit different than 1%, and I think your rep wants to talk to those ones. So I'm just throwing it out there. People can decide on their own what they want to do. Maybe run a little bit of an experiment. Maybe put together an experiment. Maybe run it in Q1 so you don't mess up any Q4 numbers. But put together an experiment, and because I've done these tests on multiple things, like sending your high intent leads to account executives with calendars will increase the numbers that I talked about, and it will be very obvious. You'll also get positive qualitative feedback from your sales team. So I'd encourage some people to try it out. It definitely works.
All right. My friend Nelson has a 2-part question, one on this topic and one on the first one. So let's do this, Nelson. Your territory one first.
I'm back. It's been so long. So yeah, I was wondering, what is your take on sales territories, period? To what extent do you think they're necessary? How should people, if they are, why? And if you're going to have sales territories, how should you think about the strategy there and lead routing?
I think territories are necessary when it increases the value delivered to the customer. And so, for instance, back in the day, there was field sales reps that had regional territories. The reason that it added value to the customer is because they were local. They knew about the area. They knew about the customers and the other people that were in the area, and they could provide more value about what other people are doing. So it helped to have a regional rep in that territory. It doesn't really work that way in inside sales. Some companies will territorize by industry or company size or different things like that. So not necessarily regional territories, but segment in other ways. And if that drives increased customer value, then I think people should consider it. And so those are the ways to provide some organization and structure. The difference is the organization and structure can't get in the way of you delivering a world-class experience for your customer. And I basically see all of the roadblocks that put up about we have all these buyers complaining about how annoying it is to buy B2B software. And then when people talk about that and executives come back, the barriers that they put up, the excuses that they make not to do this is all internal constraints. They created the constraints for themselves, and then they just use them as excuses not to change. And so, yeah. Do you have a second part of that question? And I get that whole question.
He does. Perhaps he needs to be unmuted to ask it, but we're going to make that happen. You're back again.
Back again. Anyway, so yeah, thanks for that one. I agree with you on that. Yeah, the other part of my question, sorry, it's doubling back. So if you want to take it later and pass, you can, but it was going back to your ad example of that company that spent like $750,000 in ads. And then you looked into CRM and they got 60,000 in revenue. But how can you be sure to rule out that there isn't, that you're not that there isn't missing attribution on other customers and other revenue that are, the ad maybe was a touch point at some point and, down the line that led them to convert.
So you can look at the ads of what they're running, which is pure lead gen, mid-funnel content, downloads every time. And the one example that I provided is one example, but we've seen it 50 times. The same thing, different numbers, same outcome. Way too much money spent on lead gen ads on LinkedIn. $50 leads on autopilot. Some companies spend $300 on leads. Somewhere in that range, $50 to $300 per conversion. If you never look in the CRM, which is most digital marketers and digital agencies don't. So they're over there being like, we're getting $50 leads. Shit's great. Let's keep spending more money. It's awesome. All we need to do is just keep getting $50 leads. So they don't even see. And then surprisingly, for all the data-driven companies, there's no one even looking at Salesforce about whether these things are converting. They're just out there running it, collecting a bunch of leads, calling it a day. So it's very obvious and clear when this happens. And the reason, it's impossible to say that like that touch point didn't have any other tangible value, right? It's impossible to say that. However, if you look at it and they're like 10 tips to do this better, come download our ebook. And then we look over the past 12 months at every single contact that ever had an attributable touch from that campaign, and then map that back against revenue. So this isn't last touch, this isn't first touch, this is any touch. If there was any touch with this person and then they became closed won, and this is still how bad it is, that's where you get that's the most generous attribution model that you can give to anything. I do that with ebooks every time just to see. So I look at it with like visible attribution, ton of leads with ebooks that don't close, and then I'm like, okay, like the data is so bad here, why don't I open it up and say if the person ever had a campaign response to an ebook, then let's look at close one for all those, and it's still terrible. And it just shows that people don't buy that way. And so that's the way that I look at it. It would be, impossible to tell whether somebody saw the logo in a LinkedIn ad and then 9 months later did something. But
thanks, Chris.
Yeah, generally giving it the most generous attribution model, and then still seeing that it's performing very poorly and then the pattern recognition of seeing it over and over and over again. It's like when you run performance marketing, you need to measure the success of your campaigns against performance metrics, but they don't. They measure it against performance in platform. How much does the lead cost metric? They need to look at it at how much does the opportunity cost? What's the win rate of the opportunity? How much does the customer cost? It's like real basic stuff. It's interesting. I was talking on a different podcast. It'll be released soon. It was actually really, really great. One of the people was like, one of the questions that I got was on the, what are like B2B marketers should act more like B2C marketers. And the thing that I took away and what I responded with, I thought was interesting, which is that the thing in B2C that B2B marketers need to understand is that in B2C, there's no sales team. Your marketing has to sell stuff. That's the thing. And so if B2B marketers took that mindset of my marketing needs to get someone to ready to buy. We don't have a checkout process, but I need them to be ready to buy. You actually have a completely different marketing mix. But most B2B marketers have been trained that my job is actually just to collect an email address so that my sales team can try and do sales. And so that's the number one takeaway that I think, and I think why a lot of people should run e-commerce marketing and measure it against sales, because your marketing really needs to work to to sell stuff there, which is not always the case in B2B.
Thanks, Chris. Actually, a follow-up to that, if I may monopolize, and sorry, Bob, but have you seen an example from your own personal experience where a buyer has bought a vendor or whatever software because they had a better buying experience, even though maybe a competitor had a better product or had better pricing or maybe sexier marketing? We're just like, look, you know what, I'm just going to roll with this. Is just easier for me to kind of, it's just, you know, like, so even if a company had a better product, or even if they had better pricing, just better marketing and sales win, a better buying experience wins.
Totally. But who defines what better is, right? So who says that their product actually was better? Who says, right? The buying experience is subjective, but the quality of the product is also subjective. But there's plenty, right? That's why I think it's one of the reasons why product-led companies are disrupting enterprise, because enterprise companies just can't be buyer-centric in their process. They could. It's crazy. Like, a lot of companies think that the solution is to create a product-led offering for their like highly customizable, difficult, like it's going to be hard to make a product-led offering for what they have. And they think that's the solution. When the actual solution is just having a buyer-centric sales and marketing process that gets people, when they're ready to buy, that you help them buy. But I think there's plenty of examples. I know for sure that I've purchased products that were not my top choice because I couldn't get a meeting with a rep for 2 weeks and I need to make a decision and I'm busy. And so your product is not so great that I'm going to go out of my way to buy it when you make it hard. And I think that every B2B buyer would feel the same way.
All right. Good one, Nelson. I think
that was a
4
good
questions.
chat.
All right. Bob has a couple questions. So excited to bring you on, Bob, and Tracy, you're up next. But Bob, go ahead. We'll have, we're on a multiple question train tonight, so you can have 2 questions. Go ahead and ask your first one.
All right, thanks, Chris and Megan. Hey, so first of all, I wanted to definitely validate, Chris, not that you need my validation for it, but everything you've always said since like day one on all your podcasts has totally been correct and accurate. And the attribution that you talked about a couple of weeks ago, I've always had the free form attribution, and your number was spot on. It's like 80% of peer-to-peer or online social. And the other thing you mentioned tonight about the calendar request, I've always had a direct schedule, book a demo on my Calendly link, and it's the highest conversion rate for book meetings by far. It's like 95%, what you said. So definitely always accurate in all your advice, which is why I always come back and ask for your advice on a couple things. First was a LinkedIn nuts and bolts. Having some extra budget, was going to start doing some LinkedIn again. I tried doing a list previously to like the top 50 key accounts with titles. My question was, in the absence of any sort of advanced targeting software that I know ad agencies maybe have, is there any way that I can't see to build a list with actual people's names? Like, rather than doing the titles, I like have a couple hundred exact people I want the ads delivered to. And for the life of me, I can't figure out how to do it.
So technically, yes, you can use a list upload and it'll try and match the email address to do it. However, you need to have a specific size large enough because of privacy policies in order to do that. So the match size, I believe, needs to be over 1,000 on LinkedIn.
Got it. And you need emails. I don't have the emails, as I just have the names and the titles. So that's what I was looking for. Okay.
Yeah, you need the email in order to do it. The alternative way, it's not perfect, but the alternative way that you could is if you're going like take your top 50 accounts or whatever you have, upload that. It'll match the account list based on name, domain, LinkedIn URL. LinkedIn has that data, so you could be able to put those accounts in, and then you can just target the like VP and C-suite of those things, and you'd get to the people with like there'd be a little bit of waste, but it's almost negligible. You'd get to the people that you wanted.
Okay. Some of the organizations are huge, right? They have like 20, 30,000 people across many different divisions and many VPs. And so that's why I was trying to, because when I ran the test previously, it was very expensive, right? Comparatively speaking,
comparative to what you've been doing on Facebook for sure. Yeah.
So I was trying to just, I was trying to do very targeted ad on LinkedIn because I know that the corporate key accounts, they are on LinkedIn versus my other, the smaller business owners are not really on LinkedIn. They're on Facebook, which is where we get to the.
But what's your CAC on Facebook right now? It's low.
Well, it depends on how you measure it. But on the upfront contract value, we're at a 2-month payback.
Yeah.
And if I add in the annual, it's like a 1-month payback. If I add in the annual, it's still very small numbers. It's only based off of 10 accounts that we've closed year to date. But with these small ad spend that we had, it's a 5x payback on the upfront contract value alone on margin, just measuring pure margin. The margin versus ad spend is a 5x payback. So I'm really happy with it. And that kind of brings me to part 2, unless you had a
just a follow up there. If you're at like 1 or 2 months on Facebook and you basically ran close to the same play, you'd expect probably 2 to 3x higher CAC on LinkedIn, which could be still acceptable to you based on where you are. I'd almost run that. It sounds like on LinkedIn you're actually going after a different type of customer, right? It sounds like you're going after a bigger account. So I would, if I were you, I would try and almost replicate what you did on Facebook on LinkedIn first, which is better targeting. You might actually get better because you can be more efficient in the targeting than you can on Facebook, right? So I would try that first. Like, can I get booked meetings? Can I close deals that way? And then once I start to see that and I have my like cost efficiency, okay, our CAC at LinkedIn is 3-month payback instead of 2 months on Facebook. Now I'm going to add in this other layer where I can go into the enterprise, because in the enterprise it's going to be longer cycles, more difficult to track, you know what I mean? It gets a little bit different. And so if you have limited budget, I would keep going on the things that are working initially, and then once you get the raise or the other things you're waiting for, I would go and add that layer to it.
For sure. I'll definitely try it again and do what you suggested, because everything you've always suggested comes out 100% accurate. So this leads me to part 2, actually, which is I'm presenting to the board again on Thursday and presenting the data. And, to me, it's a no-brainer. If I can show you a 5x return on the payback, like, why would you not scale this and throw more money at the budget? Because we believe it's scalable to some degree, of course. So we're doing a little bit different thing too. I started running DTC ads. So for this, my customers are the type of businesses that we like compete with our own customers. We go into like a Walmart, for example, and we provide services in that Walmart, and those patients are our customers. So I'm now running DTC ads. Okay. And on Facebook. And it's interesting because it's the payback is a little bit different. It's a different mindset. It's with the B2B, where you're trying to build brand right over time and get that demand created, and they come into the site eventually, and they convert for a demo request. With the D2C, we're looking for an immediate conversion, right? Because there's this existing demand, and so we're looking for that immediate payback. But for me, I'm going to present this to the board where it's really tough to kind of measure how exactly they're signing up. Is it because of the social ads, or is it because of other reasons? Did they just walk in? And but I can show some trend lines. And to me, a break even, and I wanted to get your experience with this, and this goes a little bit more into private equity, venture capital, kind of presenting to the board. If we can show increased exam counts, that's really where the equity raises and investment come from, which is showing that revenue growth on the exam side of the business. So to me, a 1-to-1 break even is actually a win. Like an exam revenue dollar is worth more than an ad dollar spent, if that makes sense, because of a multiplier. I mean, that's kind of how I'm thinking about it from a marketing perspective and a business, trying to tie it to revenues for the founders. So that's how I was going to kind of lead with the presentation. I'm curious to get your take on any part of what I just said, either my theory behind doing paid social for DTC ads and just getting a break even on that. I know that's not really, it's like a growth at all costs kind of mindset, but we're trying to grow that number, right? We have the capacity. Any thoughts on either one of those two concepts?
So first off, I have to announce this to the entire DGL community. We have we have Bob here that once identified as a sales professional, but he is definitely a marketer now.
I appreciate that.
You are crushing it, man. Yeah, it's been awesome to see the progress. You've been with us pretty much the whole way. I've been with you pretty much the whole way.
It's been all you, for no question about it. This show 100% totally changed the way I go to market. There's no question.
I love that. So on the break even, are you running that nationally or are you running that in a specific market?
I'm running it I'm testing it right now. So I did a test a month ago with a couple locations. It looked like we got a pop that broke even. I ran a couple more locations. Now I'm rolling it to, as of today, I'm rolling it to half of our locations. You want to talk about, I'm now like a full-time social media man. Like I was running one B2B ad a week. Now I'm running dozens of variable ad sets to multiple, retail locations, right? It's like full-time, like multiple full-time jobs over here. To answer your question, so I'm targeting, I feel like I got the targeting pretty locked in.
Yep.
Some trick, again, I used all tricks that you taught me on how to target our B2B customer base. I did some similar likes and interest on things I thought would work for the customer. And it seems like it's working really well. I mean, comparatively speaking, it seems like it's at least working. Let's put it that way.
So, in a one-to-one break even, meaning that like, the exam, you make $150 on the exam and it costs you $150 to get that person in the door. Or if you're selling software and you sell 30K ACV software and it costs you $30,000 to acquire a customer, that's considered best in class right now. The reason is because software companies are going to get 10 to 15x or more multiples on revenue. And so with a 12-month payback, as long as they don't create cash flow problems for themselves, it's a good buy to spend $1 and get 10x or more in valuation. And so on your side, the cash flow thing is the challenge. But what you're going for on the media initially, and I think what people undervalue in spending media early, is that you are looking to basically break even to acquire amount of customers in the market so that an amount of customers have become your customer and then go tell other people. It's the same thing in if it was DTC e-com, like the goal of media is to basically have a customer acquisition cost where you're not losing money every time, but you're putting the product in people's hands that are going to go and tell other people. And then the momentum starts rolling if you deliver a great product to a great customer. And that's where you see the momentum building, where companies started working with us and they were doing $1 million in a quarter in pipeline, and now they're doing $9 million a quarter in pipeline. And you just get the train rolling. Just a caveat there, that took 6 quarters for that to happen for people. So this isn't some like easy fix. But that's the amount of impact that you can have when you start getting the product into the market. You start fueling word of mouth, and you're basically just aligning how you're selling to how people want to buy. So if I was going to offer you some suggestions on this, I would do it a tad differently, but don't feel like you need to change. This is just a recommendation. Don't feel like you need to change your plan based on what I'm saying. But I would have focused on 1 or 2 markets and tried to get them to really work. Where I'm going from like 10 appointments a month to 50 in a couple of markets, and I can do that repeatedly for 1, 2, or 3 months in a row, and then I'm going to go and move that to other markets once I really know that it drives the volume. Right now, it could be, I don't have enough details to make an assessment on the volume and things like that, but that's how I would get it to really work. And it's just like if you were building a franchise, right? So like if you had a franchise business and you were a food truck, before you had 10 food trucks, you'd want to make sure the one food truck makes enough money to be profitable, can operate, can do all those things. And so that would be the same approach that I took here. If you were going to open a gym, same thing would go. Like make sure that you can run one gym profitably before you try and franchise it and other people want to buy.
Definitely appreciate the insight. That was my initial suggestion. We started with 3, and then based off of the initial pop from the first week, the CEO called and said, run this everywhere. So yeah, so I pretty much
that's cool.
That's what we did. I said, how about we run it? I tried to scale it back a little bit for some. So exactly what you said is kind of where I was going for it. But particularly because I said, great, let's scale it. Can we hire someone? And I put a joke on LinkedIn about it today. And he's like, no, you can do it. And I'm like, great. So I spent my whole weekend setting up ads. So I definitely appreciate your insight, Chris.
What's the offer you're using to get people in the door? I'm just curious.
No, I'm just using, there isn't even an offer. It's just saying exams are available here. And, at the various locations. And I have like a nice looking, stock photo of some ladies wearing glasses and contacts and stuff. And so the reality is there's pent up demand. So there's a lot of existing demand. Patients have to wait weeks to months to get an exam because everyone's backed up because of COVID. So I think just making people aware that it was even available, because these also were historically sites that did not have a doctor present. And that's why they wanted us in there. Right. So it's just a matter of like making the market. So it's like market awareness. So that's what we're doing. So that's on that, but it's a whole different realm I haven't touched previously. And that's why I wanted to kind of get your insight. So as always, appreciated.
Great to hear from you, Bob. Yeah. A couple notes, like if you have some type of local targeting, this stuff can work super well. So for Bob's like iLocations, other like B2C retail type of things can work, but perhaps let's see. Perhaps I want to give an example here. Perhaps there's a big, I've done this one before. This is back in like 2017. Perhaps there's a big conference that most of your buyers go to. And so instead of buying the booth, spending $100,000 to buy the booth, what if you just made a geofence around the conference and then ran media to all of them and you basically have perfect targeting to the places. You could have them even have a direct response to set up a meeting at a coffee shop or come to an offsite event or have a dinner or what, you know what I mean? There's plenty of things that you could do. Anyway, the location-based targeting of paid social is super powerful.
All right, good to have you, Bob. Good luck in your presentation. Let us know how it goes. All right, I've got Tracy, Joey, and Anya up for questions. So let's keep the AMA rolling. So Tracy, good to have you tonight.
Pictures.
Hey.
Right on.
Figured it out. Thanks so much, Megan and Chris. I aspire to be more like Bob as I'm testing into things too, like the organic.
Don't we all?
And I've been using the how did you hear about us? Our fiscal year is a little bit wonky in that we just wrapped it up. So all your planning tips were helping, and it's all about how can we increase revenue? So, driving new demand, as well as the handoff. I've been very involved with that to help increase our conversion rate. And then with our existing customers, the challenge is we're a commercial construction services company, and our PMs, our project execs, they're assigned to these high revenue accounts that build a lot, and they're high profile projects. So we got a lot of great press, dark social with word of mouth. People see our trucks and our cranes. And when they're building, they're getting a lot of love from, our execs and the people on the project. They love us. The challenge is that our competition sometimes has the opportunity to sneak in when we're between projects, because those same execs move on to other projects. And that's where our world-class customer experience can start to fall short or get forgotten in those in-between moments. So I was wondering what your advice might be we don't have a customer service department. For me, I guess kind of pinch hitting or marketing things besides people rating our swag room of promotional items, how can we keep nurturing those relationships in between projects and kind of have a customer experience that's consistent?
So just help me understand this industry a little bit. Is it common for people to switch providers like yours between projects?
It depends on the strength of the relationship with the project team and the number of projects. It's not super common, but in recent, if you don't differentiate yourself, we lost a couple of big customers that didn't come back to us. And were like in a close vicinity and we thought things were good. And then we found out that we kind of dropped the ball.
So number one, have you called the decision maker, or somebody at your company called the decision maker that's not the salesperson, that wasn't involved in the deal, and asked them why they decided to do that, and just ask for honest feedback so that you could get better next time?
Yeah, you need customer exit interviews.
That's the move, and like marketing's in a good place to do it. I'll let you finish, but then I'll talk through why.
Yeah, we made some assumptions. One particular instance was there was a change in their decision makers and their executive teams, and we didn't stay on top of it. And there's a couple of things where we had a little bit of turnover, so that execs' top accounts weren't picked up. So we're learning some of those lessons.
Yeah, I mean the way that I see it, this is like standard account management. Sure, there's some things in marketing that you can do. You can put on an event, you can do some surprise and delight and send some people a gift or something like that. You can do those things, but when it comes down to it, like managing the account and the customer throughout projects, understanding their priorities, I think this is more of a sales account management challenge than a marketing challenge in my view. And so, yeah, that's my general assessment. And I think a lot of companies that do more project-based work can sometimes struggle with this, because if they're not getting paid for the project, they just go out and try and find new business, not try and take care of the customer. And so the mindset would be that basically the customer's I love looking at recurring revenue or recurring plans, because you basically need to continue to deliver value every month. And so looking at it in that way, where I don't care if there's an active project or not, I want to be delivering value. I want to understand the business priorities. I want to be making introductions. I want to be doing whatever I got to do to continue to bring value to that account, whether or not we have an active project. That's what I would work on. Some of the things like decision maker changes, they want to go and use the firm they've been using for the past 20 years and they want to kill us. That stuff's going to happen. That's almost unavoidable. The things that are avoidable is like, we had attrition on our side and Jimmy didn't pass the contact information to the new rep, and so we didn't call them for the first 2 months, and they thought that we, went out of business, so they went and found someone new.
Yeah. Some of the things we're trying to do is like live at the same or trade shows and conferences as they are, and not necessarily have a booth, but have those fireside chats and pull in those SMEs. So and some of that is sales or business development looking to us to be like, what should we do? So
a community element could work too.
Yeah.
Just to chime in on this, Tracy, I think I agree with Chris. I think this is more of an account management issue, but I think as a marketer, I think one way, if you're kind of like chipping in to help figure this out, is to do some type of like customer exit interview market research project. Because I think it's really easy to make assumptions of like why people leave. Some things are obvious, but going through an exercise where you're talking to your actual customers that have actually left, customers that you still have, and why they might decide to continue working with you, going through like a methodical interview process so that you can really like understand trends and not make decisions off one-off or anecdotal situations that have happened in the past. And likely whatever you uncover is likely going to speak to your customer journey and what happens like post-sale, but at least you could provide some data points to the team on maybe some areas of improvement, either mid-project or post-project life cycle that could retain your customers longer.
Yeah, some of it kind of stemmed from when Chris provided like a back pocket phrase, or, hey, this is Chris, I'm your director of customer experience, not trying to change your mind kind of thing. So that's what kind of inspired it. As I'm doing segmentation and getting to know them deeper, I'm guessing things like that would help. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Loss analysis and churn analysis is when I use that. Hey, I'm Chris, the director of customer experience, would love to. I saw that we had this opportunity open and we saw that you were a customer and it didn't work out. Would love to spend 5 minutes trying to understand your experience better so we can do better next time. And I've never had someone say no to that. So you typically get, and then you get information that like I would have never known. Like the sales rep didn't know that this account was in a 3-year agreement with our competitor. And they were just wasting their time chasing this enterprise account around for 12 months. And you get things like that. So,
Okay.
Cool.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy.
Yep.
All right, Joey, you're up next. I don't know what Joey's going to ask, but I think it's going to be good. We'll see.
All right.
Joey, you're on live.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Chris, nice to see you again.
Good to see
I had
you.
a quick question in terms of distributing content. So when you distribute content, say on social, and you don't focus on MQLs and having that mindset of just simply distributing content to our target audience, I just wanted to ask, do you put them in a funnel where you make sure they see the narrative? For example, you have 5 ads or 5 things you want to show your target audience, and ad 1 focuses on, like, say, top 5 tips or something like that. You're just trying to help your audience. Do you retarget the impressions from ad 1 onto ad 2, then ad 3, and then so on? So ad 3 will retarget ad 2 impressions. That way you're pushing them through, like you're getting those touch points. Is that how you would do it, or?
No. A lot of people think that that's the best way to do it, and a lot of our customers have asked us to run these tests where and the test that normally gets asked is, hey, we want to do this thing. Let's take 100,000 people that's in our TAM or whoever our target is, and then we're going to run a Facebook ad, and then the people, and for top of funnel, like some content that people like they think is because it doesn't have to do with the product, they think it's valuable, but it's not. So let's run that. And then we'll spend $10,000 to get 1,000 clicks. And then we'll do some type of mid-funnel type of thing. Let's do a ungated case study. That'll be perfect. And so then we'll do that, and we'll spend a certain amount of money to get a certain amount of clicks. And then by the time you get to the end, the audiences aren't even small enough to retarget. You need to have 1,000 people in an audience. So in order to just get to the 4th step, you need to spend like $40,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the amounts of money add up when you use that form of retargeting. The second thing is, like, all roads on those ones end at direct response conversion, right? So everyone's like, let's build our funnel, let's go through all these steps, but then all we're doing is trying to get someone to the end where we can say, hey, come get a demo, and try and get them to DR convert there. And
but
then
say that you're not trying to get them to convert.
So then if you look at I just want to help finish this thought, and then we can get into that.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the conversion rates to even just qualified opportunity, the difference between the 4th step of a retargeting flow to get a demo into a meeting has the exact same conversion rate if you just get a demo at the first place. So like the sequence, in my opinion, adds complexity and adds no value. The second thing that's really interesting to think about is that it's not like just because there was an impression that message was consumed. So you're making assumptions that somebody that got an impression of step 2 consumed the message and is ready for step 3, or you assume that they're in some phase where they haven't already seen step 3, which again is just, there's such limited data here that most people end up guessing, and they try and build these like complex funnels that use flawed data to decide which ad to serve them.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that makes total sense. So when people say, like, to gain, say, for example, seven touch points to, say, for example, I know the touch points are higher in B2B. So how would you go about, reaching those touch points without putting them in a funnel? Like, how would you go about doing that?
So I'm not sure where the stat of 7 touch points is the average to get someone to know who you are, but I'm not looking to be average in a B2B game. I'm looking to have 1 touch point where someone consumes a 5-minute video and remembers my company forever, right? And so if you're in the average here, right, that means that there's people that spend 14 touches doing it, and who knows how that data was collected, which is why I don't like referencing these studies, because it's who knows what it is. Like some typically, and I've seen stuff like Gartner will take a study from like B2C e-commerce CMOs in the Fortune 1000, and then that stat will show up, and then my customer, who's a $10 million ARR SaaS company, will be referencing that stat, and it's like it's totally irrelevant to you. And so, in terms of the touch points, like it's a way easier way to think about what we're doing in social is that we're building direct lines of communication with all of your customers. And then we're able to distribute messages and content and information to them all the time in a way that's way more effective than anything that you're doing right now. And right now, you either rely on email, or you rely on SDR outbound, or you rely on someone getting into a meeting so your sales team can tell them these things. And all of them are inefficient and inexpensive and don't match how buyers want to buy. And so we're just doing it in a modern, effective way. And in that way, like, my goal was for everything that goes out to be valuable and to serve a purpose and to move someone forward. And so if you think about it that way, like I look at my LinkedIn content analytics, right? Like there are some posts that get 350 likes. There are some posts that get 800 likes. There's clearly differences between the two, but just because something got 350 likes instead of 800 doesn't mean that one was better than the other. The one that's 350 was probably more narrow. The posts that I get that get 1,000 likes are things that like marketing takes time, or things that are very broad that apply to a lot of people. Some of my best pieces of content get 300 likes because it's more specific, it's more narrow, it's more narrow. And so it goes back to the question that people asked earlier, like if you just look at click-through rate or like things like that, it can actually be misleading. I think there's more to it.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. That makes sense.
Happy to help, Joey. That was a good one.
Thanks, Joey. All right, I've got Anya and then Omar up next. So Anya, you had a nice
We're going on a long one today, huh?
Thank you, Megan. Hi, Chris. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Anya.
So there's one story that kept popping up in my head that you told some episodes ago, where you had a quote unquote change of heart, how you started this when you walked in a room, break room, and you saw the people on the phone. And then today we talked about LinkedIn and video, and we mentioned, sitting down with a client and making all this, I'd say very buttoned up videos of that we can break down. My question was, I'd like to hear your thoughts on TikTok and video versus LinkedIn and video. Knowing that, we have like 85% of Gen Z using social media to learn about new products, and they're soon to be like very large portion of our audience. And typically what I see is LinkedIn being considered to be most professional, but also seems that most Gen Zers don't really relate or like that buttoned up feel. And I know that content is consumed a little bit differently with younger generation. When it comes to marketing, I also know that you mentioned a lot that influencers is something we should be using. And I found that Gen Zers trust their peers and influencers to whom they relate, right? Do you think we will be able to find those quote unquote relatable, real, not buttoned up influencers on LinkedIn in the future, which seems to be rare these days?
So there was quite a few in there, so I'll try and hit on them. First, you mentioned that 85% of Gen Z people use social to learn about products. Like pretty much 100% of B2B buyers use social to learn about products. Social, communities, word of mouth, if you put those three things together, every buyer does that. And so it's not just Gen Z over here for the people that are listening afterwards, it's everyone. Everyone does this. When you think about, like you mentioned, buttoned up between TikTok and LinkedIn, the difference is that they're different platforms. And in different platforms, different styles of content and different things play. Like In LinkedIn, it typically is more professional, more buttoned up. In TikTok, it's pretty much the opposite. Is there going to be people that push the boundaries in LinkedIn and have success in that, and it will continuously, the types of content and things will expand? I believe yes. I believe that will happen. And if we look at it right now, for most B2B companies, like targeting Gen Z right now probably is not the most effective strategy, because they just don't have the buying power to do those things. Not to say that you shouldn't use TikTok, right? Because there's plenty of people that are our age or significantly older that are having a lot of success and consuming a lot of content and learn about products on TikTok. So I might be kind of skating around your actual question, but if the question is, will we see like a little bit more like raw type of stuff happen on LinkedIn from a content production standpoint? Probably. I mean, if you look at some of my early videos, I want to post one. Let's take a note, Megan. Let's have Miles pull together some like type of thing from old stuff. Like my videos in 2019 were what you're describing, like raw, low production. It probably was worse than, yeah. So I think that it will go that way, but probably not very fast.
I'm unmuting you, Anya.
Yeah,
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'd just
or?
be curious in why, like, why are you asking, so I can help a little bit more.
Oh no, that was just a thought I had, because I don't see a lot of Gen Zers. Maybe they're still a little bit too young, like you said, to be in that professional LinkedIn environment. But just a thought.
Yeah, and they might never use LinkedIn, right? Like, there are like some people in my generation that never used MySpace, and then by the time they were at an age where they could use it, better stuff was coming out. So they like, it's possible that some generations just never use LinkedIn. By the time they get to a place where they're professional, there's a different way to do the same thing that we're doing on LinkedIn right now.
All right. Our good friend Omar has a question. What's up, Omar?
Hey, Megan. Hey, Chris. How's it going? Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, crystal clear.
Great. So my question is this: one thing that I've realized it again for me, most of the companies I've joined have been either Series A, Series B company, or like pre-IPO. So normally the marketing teams are either I'm a team of one, or there's like 3 or 4 people, right? So my question is about CAC. And so what I'm used to, and I think everybody else is used to, is you take your ad spend and you look at how many customers you've acquired and you end up with your CAC. Chris, I wanted your thoughts on how people should think about ad CAC versus, incorporating the whole marketing function spend, including like salaries and agency fees and everything. And then on top of that, like marketing plus sales, right? Because what I'm afraid of is getting that, having to track too many things and getting spread very, very thin. And so do you recommend starting with, let's say, focusing on ad CAC, let's say for Series A, B companies that are small, and then worrying about those marketing plus sales CACs later on? Or should you track all 3 from the beginning? Kind of give me some advice on this as to how I should think about it.
Yeah. So looking at it, at least advertising and marketing CAC would be a good look. And then somebody in the business is looking at total CAC, right? So it may not be you, but somebody's looking at how much money are we spending on sales and marketing? How many customers did we get? How much did that cost? What's the payback? So somebody is looking at that. And the way that I look at it is you have advertising cost of acquisition, which I think advertising might be a little bit misleading. It's basically working dollars or program costs. And that you can use that blended, like our model is blended on that because we recognize that attribution's flawed and we're running multi-channel journeys. And so we run blended, but all the companies that run single channel lead gen could just run advertising or program CAC direct to revenue against those, what you had attribution on. So blended or not, you have advertising cost of acquisition. Most companies there are targeting from a marketing standpoint. I think a lot of companies would be happy to get 6 to 12 months there. If you're spending money on ads, right? So there's the flip side of this where it can be where it can be misleading the other direction, where that number can actually be too low. And so it happens with a lot of companies that we work at, like they're 100 million ARR, they aren't growing as fast as they want to grow. Their advertising CAC payback is 1.2 months. And the reason is because they're just significantly underspending on advertising and they're getting enough customers. You know what I mean? They're significantly spending on advertising and the customers are coming through organically. And so they have a low advertising cost of acquisition. And if they want to grow faster, they need to start spending money to drive revenue. So you have advertising cost of acquisition. Next, you have marketing, which is going to include headcount, basically entire marketing budget over total customers. And you're going to look at that. And then you have marketing and sales over total customers. On the marketing side, when I'm looking at marketing CAC, I'm only looking at marketing sourced deals. So that gives you the three angles. I would, when I'm doing this with customers, I'm looking at the top two. So I'm looking at advertising cost of acquisition becomes my main metric because I don't have a ton of control over how our customers allocate their tech and headcount budget. And so advertising cost of acquisition becomes my metric and making that where I want it to be. But for you and yours, your main one probably you need both because you need to understand what is your working dollars going, and then on the marketing side. So I would look at those two: advertising cost of acquisition to total customers. You're probably in a blended model because you attend the show almost every week, and so that one would just be working dollars to marketing source customers. And then you have total marketing cost to marketing source customers.
Got it. And one last thing is this, so we're tracking definitely the whole thing in terms of not just our ad spend, but also like agency fees, like, we're doing that model. But what would be the justification of adding, let's say, the salaries that come out of marketing and also sales to this, aside from showing it to, let's say, investors? But for me as like a head of marketing, like why is that something that's important for me to look at?
To benchmark, to understand how you're doing, to look at it over time, because as you scale, the allocation that you put to working dollars versus headcount is going to change. And so you could get to a place where it's 50-50, but you have the resources that you need to run the machine. And then your ad CAC payback is 2 months and you go raise another round of funding and you're putting on the short term pretty much to working dollars and advertising, not onto the headcount. So your allocation changes so that maybe it's 60% programs, 40% headcount, just because you increased budget and allocated it all there. And then you just have you basically have two metrics to help you point it out.
Got it. It sounds like you have to have each of these and also measure the types of customers that are coming through differently, just so you can start comparing. So, like what buckets to, allocate more resources to. Is that correct?
It's just like if you're, for the finance people out there, it's just like if you're running a business, you need to understand what are my variable costs and what are my fixed costs. Like your fixed costs are going to be headcount, tech, those things. And then what are the variable expenses? Advertising, how I want to run events, how I want to think about, those types of things, and they're two different types of expenses. Typically, what you want is you want the advertising investment to almost be functionally aligned with outcomes, and then the goal was to basically not minimize, because you don't want to minimize your headcount and things like that, but you get what I'm saying. You want to optimize it.
Got it. Thanks, Chris.
Happy to help. Great question, Omar.
All right. We have Floris to round us out tonight with a good one. Happy to have you on, Floris.
Good afternoon good morning for us from sunny Queensland, the Sunshine State. Chris, by the way, thanks you, Megan, and the whole Refine Labs team and everybody else. Great show as usual. Chris, there's a DM for you that I think you need to look at from me to you.
Cool.
Otherwise, my question is, product-led companies, right? Are they, in order to spread the information, are people still searching on Google first and YouTube second to get that product information, or are they going directly to the socials to get their info?
Could you ask the question one more time? I'm not sure I fully understand.
So let's say you're a consumer and you're looking for product information. Are product-led companies advertising their information through SEO and YouTube, etc., because that's where people are going first? Or are people going directly into the social media networks and looking for their information there?
So how do I explain this? Product-led companies spend their money on Google SEO and YouTube because of attribution.
Okay.
Not because it's most effective, but because it's easiest to measure, and because it's easy to measure, it's easy to show lots of signups for cheap costs. And so that's fine if people are searching around, and then I would audit that because at least 20% of the submissions are typically complete spam, like not even close to a real human. Some that I've seen have been way higher percentage of that. So companies that spend $250,000 a month on Google Ads, and literally $100,000 is going to like garbage Gmails and Hotmails that don't exist going into your forms. But product-led companies love to do that because they report more signups, and they literally just don't scrutinize the spend or audit the leads because there's so many. And the point of your question was, where are they going to look once they're looking? What companies need to think about is, how do I get someone to look? Get it? It's a complete different mind frame. It's the difference between capturing demand and creating demand. Most companies just sit there and wait for someone to say, oh, I need a project management tool. And then all the Monday.com, Asana, all those other companies are pumped to spend $30 a click to try and compete for that one person. But I think it would be way easier to win. I just don't know why companies don't do this, especially if you're selling a product-led offering that you're trying to get into the enterprise. Enterprise buyers need to understand enterprise use cases for your product-led offering and then make a decision. So companies always try, it's just like, I talked about this last week, but they try and get someone into the product and then let the product do all of the work. They need to focus on doing the work outside of the product. It's a measurement, and it's an outdated model of like, yeah, I think it's outdated to think that someone needs to be in the product in order for an enterprise company to grow from the product. An enterprise motion is clearly different. Like, you need a group of people to determine that they want to change. Mm-hmm. And so like, I struggle with product-led companies that try and get one user into the product and then try and, like, through growth loops and all the other dumb shit that people are talking about, just think that magically this one user is going to inspire the organization to change. And so it's really like, if you, in a product-led motion, you basically have two separate go-to-market motions in my view. The companies, no matter what I say, they're going to keep running their Google $500,000 a month to just collect names and users and things like that for people that could be enterprise, but for the most part are going to be your $100 a month type of customer. And then they actually need an enterprise demand motion. That's what most product-led companies miss. Companies that built product-led from the beginning I think have a really flawed way of looking at enterprise demand, which is get someone in there, look at usage statistics, and then cold call people, and then just rely on sales. It's just like the ebook model. And so instead of doing that, I would just think that you got to figure out how to inspire an organization to change. That's demand.
Okay. So just to clarify then what you're suggesting or what you're implying is that the work that needs to be done outside of the product is basically just create the content and put it on the right channels so that people come across it, and then through awareness or at some stage or serendipitous moment, they find out they actually have a need for the product, then they are converted then they start getting in contact with the company, getting demo trials, etc., and then moving from there.
Yeah, totally. So imagine you're an enterprise organization. You got 1,000 employees. At the moment, there's one person that's signed up for the product, right? So there's one person in there that's using, I don't know, I'm not going to name a company, so just using the product there. And so from that, like that organization's standpoint, they're like trying to get that person to like share, invite their coworkers, like get the coworkers to sign up, create this growth loop, try and get more people in there. When what they actually need to do is they need to show the rest of the organization the opportunities and the reasons why, the features, the value, the use cases that it can derive from it, the problems that it solves. The reason is because when you raise people's awareness to that level, one, they're going to see the opportunities and the pain points in their business because they're aware of them. This is just black and white clear. The second piece is that they're going to see those pain points or those opportunities in their business, and they're going to, in some meeting, say, hey, I was looking at this company XYZ to solve this. I just saw that Jimmy was struggling with that. And then Jimmy says, actually, hey, I've been using that product for the past 3 months. It's actually pretty cool. I think we should use it. That's how you sell enterprise accounts. And so that's, I think, what people miss the second part, where you need to figure out how to get the organization on board, and it doesn't have to happen through your product-led flow. If you have a follow-up, I love this. I love this topic. So if you want to keep going, let's do it.
No, that's fine. I was just waiting for Megan to unmute me. No, that's actually wonderful. And the one thing that I can add to it is, from my experience so far, the Google hamster wheel and all that only works because most people don't really understand what the pains and the gains are of the product, of the target audience. And I'm a marketing consultant, so I always take the people back to the basics, right? Which is understand why you do what you do, and understand who you do it for, and what problem you're trying to solve. And a lot of problems, and I use the strategizer value proposition canvas to do that, because it's visually very attractive, appealing, and easy to understand. You've got your pains, your gains, pain relievers, and gain creators. And my experience has been that most people don't even understand what the pains are. And so they cannot create the right content that they need to put on the right channels in order to raise that awareness. And they end up just doing the usual stuff that you have very clearly spoken very loudly about. So that has been my experience. So
it's been my experience too, just to echo that. Like in the enterprise and product led, it doesn't matter. Like marketers don't understand customers well enough to drive effective strategy. That's a sweeping statement, but I think in my experience, it's the truth.
So the follow-up is, once you have your content, then you put it on the socials. And I'm guessing is, how do you build it up fast enough if you've got that KPI or pressure from the C-suite to actually get it to start having an impact fast enough? How do you then go about to try and either organically or paid, or a combination of both? And again, depending on the channel, how do you get that awareness to spread a bit faster?
You change the goal. The goal in these companies is signups,
right?
Which creates short-term direct response behavior. The goal creates this, right? And so because product-led companies are so used to, I need so many signups because our B2C or our SMB motion is only going to pay us $20 a month. So I need so much that's the marketing model that's been created. And then when they move over to the accounts that are going to be $100,000 a year, or 500 or $1 million, they do the same thing. And it's like it's a completely different, you don't need a high volume lead gen motion at this ACV. You actually need to teach people stuff, because you don't need 10,000 leads to get $100,000 in recurring revenue at this price point. You need like 5. And so if you change the goal, which is what we do with companies, is like define what enterprise means to you at your company. And then let's look back over the past 4 to 6 quarters and look at how, based on your definition, how much enterprise stage 2 or stage 3 pipeline has been created through marketing. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make that number go up over the next 2 quarters. And it doesn't matter whether they filled out your free trial, whether they asked for a demo, whether they were active in the product, but on a free plan, and they became an enterprise through usage statistics or for whatever reason. Doesn't matter where they came. Your enterprise pipeline is going up because we're effectively communicating with enterprise customers about your product.
And also you're already pre-qualifying the people that come in through, and therefore you have a higher conversion.
Certainly, yes. And when you think about it, like the reason that the high volume model is even tenable in a product-led company, I'm saying it's even tenable. Some of the customer acquisition costs aren't, right? Google CAC paybacks of literally 4 years that companies do this because they run $200,000 a month through this, and their ACV is $2,000. It's just not going to work. The math doesn't work. And so the reason that they can deal with the inefficiencies of that is because there's no human. It's all automated. So they don't have salespeople and SDRs churning through people that clearly aren't going to buy or complete spam or never going to be a customer. So you don't see it because humans don't flag it for you. But then if you did the same thing in the enterprise, your sales team would tell you straight away, these people suck. Nobody's answering the phone. This is their garbage contact information. Their email bounces. Those types of things. So, yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Floris.
That's a good one, Floris. Keep bringing the insights from the field over there. And is it Queensland?
Queensland, Australia.
Yeah. Keep bringing the stories from the field.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Closing thoughts, Chris.
Whoa. It's been a while since we rocked Demand Gen Live for this long, so I appreciate the 32 warriors that stuck around. I'm also patting myself on the back because it was a long day for me, but honestly, like, I haven't felt better today than right now. You guys give me a bunch of energy. I appreciate spending a lot of time with you. You challenge me. You make me think. It's just something. I love doing this every Tuesday. So I appreciate you all showing up and continuing to be a part of it.
All right. Well, Floris ended us on a great note. That was a great segment that we just wrapped up with. So let's call it a night. See everyone next Tuesday. Have a great week.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. See you next week. Bye. Hey, everyone. This is Chris Walker, the CEO of Refine Labs. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe to the channel for more videos in the future. We're also live for Demand Gen Live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday night, which will also go on the State of Demand Gen podcast, which is available on Apple and Spotify. Thanks again, and see you next time.